Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking some seriously chilling and honestly endlessly fascinating source material together. We're looking at the concept of the Dajjal in Islamic eschatology. But here's the thing. The texts we're examining today don't just frame him as some standard warlord. No, they describe a master of psychological and spiritual deception. According to these theological sources, the true danger of the Dajjal actually lies in his ability to manipulate the human mind and heart, and he does this using an unseen army. Let's explore exactly how this psychological warfare is constructed.
To truly grasp the weight of this abstract theology, the sources ask us to anchor it in a really visceral human emotion. I want you to imagine this highly personal, hypothetical scenario. It's late at night. There's a knock at your door. You open it, and your heart completely stops. Standing right there on your porch is someone you lost years ago. It could be your mom, your child, a best friend. They look exactly as you remember them. They've got the exact same smile, and when they speak, it's the literal voice you've been longing to hear for years. Then, with tears in their eyes, they reach out to you and utter this chilling phrase, "I've come back because he sent me. He is the true God." Now, this isn't just a ghost story. The sources present this as literally the most powerful psychological weapon in the Dajjal's arsenal. The stakes here are incredibly clear. The ultimate goal of this metaphysical deception isn't just to scare you. It's to completely break your faith in your most vulnerable moment by weaponizing your deepest grief and longing. Part 1. The Invisible Soldiers. Okay, let's dive into this. To understand the actual mechanics of this deception, we have to establish a core foundational concept in Islamic theology: the Jinn. As detailed in the texts, specifically Surah al-Jinn, these are unseen beings that actively share our world. They live right alongside us, but they remain totally hidden from our normal physical sight. And while the Dajjal is said to have human followers, his most effective, most dangerous soldiers are actually disbelieving Jinn. These disbelieving Jinn possess some terrifyingly specific abilities that make them absolute perfect tools for manipulation. The sources describe them as being able to completely change their physical form, perfectly copy a human face down to the smallest little detail, mimic the specific smell of a person, and even perfectly replicate their unique mannerisms. So we're not just talking about cheap tricks here. These are highly sophisticated multisensory replications. And that brings us to this really profound description from the texts. The Dajjal is said to have absolute, complete control over these unseen beings. He uses them to orchestrate what is described as a theater of miracles. It's basically a psychological assault designed specifically to short-circuit and defy human logic. I mean, think about it. When you're presented with something that your eyes, your ears, and your logic tell you is impossible, your mind naturally scrambles for an explanation. And that is exactly the vulnerability this deception preys upon. Part 2. The Resurrection Trick. The Hadith literature actually shares some incredibly striking, even graphic imagery regarding this. It states that the Dajjal will appear to bring the dead back to life, right in front of massive crowds. In one specific narration, he's described as taking a man, cutting him completely into two pieces, and then simply commanding him to rise. And according to the visual illusion, the man will stand right back up, fully alive and smiling. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between human perception and theological reality. The sources are absolutely adamant that the Dajjal cannot actually give life, because life and death are domains belonging strictly to God. So when someone sees their deceased parent resurrected, they aren't looking at their parents at all. They are looking at a shape-shifting jinn performing a highly calculated, deceptive role. It's a complete illusion designed to bypass logic by hijacking human grief. Part 3. Grooming the modern world. So the source texts view many of our modern cultural shifts through a very specific lens. Right now, we're seeing a massive rise in spiritualism, New Age movements, communicating with so-called spirit guides, astral travel, channeling, you name it. Interestingly, things as casual as modern horoscope apps or trendy tarot readings might be viewed by these texts as early training grounds. By engaging in these activities, the idea is that people are unknowingly learning to open their souls and minds to unseen entities. Entities which, of course, the theology identifies simply as Jinn. Which brings us to a very specific, fascinating number mentioned in the traditions, 40. The Prophet Muhammad actually gave a stern warning that anyone who merely visits a fortune teller will have their prayers rejected for 40 nights. You might wonder, why such a specific and heavy penalty?
Well, the scholars explain that engaging with the occult actively weakens a person's spiritual immune system. It normalizes taking guidance from the unseen in a way that totally bypasses divine revelation, making the individual highly susceptible to future metaphysical deceptions.
But this grooming isn't just about the occult. It's heavily embedded in our physical world, too. Thinkers like the Islamic scholar Saeed Nursi describe a really interesting concept called Dajjalism. This moves the idea of the Dajjal beyond just a single physical entity and frames it as a massive systemic infrastructure. Dajjalism is essentially a global state of materialism and technology that actively prepares the path. It builds the framework for mass deception before the deceiver even arrives on the scene.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact point. Ancient narrations describe the Dajjal riding a donkey with ears 40 cubits apart, capable of traveling the entire world in mere days. When we look at this through the lens of Dajjalism, scholars connect this ancient imagery to the staggering modern speed of technology. Think about airplanes, artificial intelligence, and instant global social media broadcasts. The technological infrastructure required to broadcast a fake miracle to billions of people simultaneously, it's already built. It's literally sitting right in our pockets.
Part 4. The Spiritual Shield.
According to the theology, the ultimate protection against all this isn't physical, it's internal. The texts state that true believers will be granted a sort of spiritual filter. It's said that every true believer, even those who are completely illiterate, will be able to clearly read the word kafir, meaning disbeliever, written right on the Dajjal's forehead. So while the rest of the world is completely mesmerized by illusions of rain and bread, the believer's inner faith, their iman, will allow them to instantly recognize the liar. So the crucial point is how one actually builds that spiritual filter. The sources outline a very specific, actionable defense protocol. Step 1 is the foundational cultivation of iman, or deep faith, just to recognize the deception in the first place. Step 2 is highly specific, the memorization of the first and last 10 verses of a specific chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Kahf. The texts describe this not just as some reading exercise, but as an active spiritual shield. It's basically a divine formula prescribed to protect the human mind from being bewitched by this unseen army.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've explored how these texts describe an absolute masterclass in psychological warfare, leveraging everything from raw human grief to global technology. The trial of the Dajjal is framed as a literal war for the mind and the soul. So, leaving the ancient text for a second and looking at our modern reality, it forces us to ask a deeply personal question. In a world where perfect illusions are rapidly becoming our everyday reality, is your spiritual immune system ready? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me today. Take some time to reflect on these ideas, and I highly encourage you to delve deeper into the source materials for yourself.